Let's make a Halloween favor box. Hi, and welcome back to my craft room. My name is Kelsey, and today we are making our first Halloween craft of the season. Now, I know it's a little bit early and we're still in summer, but you can't be too far ahead when it comes to crafting. So I will have this free SVG file and project linked below in the blog post. Also in the blog post, you'll find all the materials and tools that you need to make the box. Let's get started in Cricut Design Space. Cricut Design Space, after you upload your image, it will look something like this, and everything is ready to go. You can cut it out like this, and your longest piece is going to be 10.68 inches. If you want to max out a 12 by 12 piece of paper, you're going to go up and resize the whole image. Make sure you're always resizing the whole image no matter what. With most of my projects, especially 3D projects, you're going to want to resize everything. So to max out your whole image on that 12 by 12 piece of paper, you're going to do 24.54 inches wide and 25.315 inches tall. Now, if you have it locked, all you'll have to do is change one of those to get the proper dimensions, but just make sure that you aren't going any longer than 11.5 if your paper is only 12 by 12. And so then you can just send this over to your machine. So you'll just hit make it. And there are a few things that I want to go over. So in Cricut Design Space, you'll see for my colors, if you didn't change any of the colors, the first one I want to mark is this this like tan color here with this square. This is going to be the cork of the bottle. And I used a cork sheet, and I actually ended up just cutting it with scissors because my Cricut kept ripping it. Since then, people have told me to try the rotary blade with that material with a cork sheet. However, I just cut it out with scissors and then just didn't cut this piece out. But you can also just cut it out with paper. You don't need to have cork. And then the other two that I want to make sure that you know, this is acetate sheets, so it's like a thin plastic, so that bright blue is going to be your acetate. And then this pink is going to be your foam sheets. If you do not have foam sheets, you can use foam tape instead, just a thin foam tape. And then for the writing on the bottle, I actually used heat transfer vinyl on my acetate, and I will show you that in the assembly. So make sure you mirror that if you are using heat transfer vinyl. You can also use regular vinyl if you'd like. I don't really suggest paper on this just because the writing is very, very small. However, if that's what you prefer, then by all means go for paper and you don't have to mirror it. And so that is everything. I ended up making my bats a different black because I did them in glitter. And you can change whatever colors you need to. I never like to direct you with colors. And so that is your whole design space setup. Now for assembly. I'm starting by folding in on all of these little tabs to make the circle box, or I guess you call it a cylinder box, right? And so I'm just folding in on all these, and I actually grabbed my bone tool. It took me a second to find it, and I made those really flat. And then I'm not going to lie, I forgot to do this for the top of the box. So I ended up just using my fingers for the top piece. But these boxes are pretty easy to assemble. You're going to fold in on all of those flaps, and then you're going to glue the two sides together with the flap on the inside. So you see how it kind of divots in on the side that's at the top. We're going to attach that to the other side, and we are going to glue them together. I switch between my craft glue and my hot glue, so really it's just up to you whichever one you want to use here and what you have handy. Just make sure that you're holding it until it is set so that it stays nice and round. So I don't put any perforation lines on the sides for these round boxes, and you want to keep them as much of a cylinder as possible. For the two circles that are going to go on the inside, the smaller one will go on the inside and the larger one will go on the outside, and that is very obvious for the top as well. The easiest way that I found to do this is to put a whole bunch of glue on the one that's going to go on the inside and gently slide it inside. Now, it's going to be a little bit difficult. You want to take your time when you're doing this so you don't accidentally attach it to the inside. You can also push it inside and then kind of add the glue while it's in there. However, I put it on first and then I attached it. And then that way I can just kind of put a little more glue on all those tabs. So see how I'm putting my fingers down to glue those down. And then I'm going to put a little more glue on those tabs and then glue the bigger round circle on the outside. And so this kind of sandwiches the two together. The inside one helps the cylinder keep its shape, and then the outside one gives it a clean and polished look. So I'm just adding some glue on, and then I'm going to center this as much as possible. It's pretty much like a direct fit onto the bottom of the cylinder. And then you're going to repeat these same steps for the top of the box, the black pieces. However, you are going to see that the top circle is going to be much larger, and that's because it's going to resemble a witch's hat. So it has a larger brim on the outside. I'm rolling the cone part of the hat here, and you're just going to do the same thing that we did with the cylinder where you match the edges. And I'm trying to kind of overlap them a little bit on a diagonal. But at the end of the day, the bottom part of the cone should be flat. So you don't want it to be like on an angle or anything like that. You want it to be as flat as possible. Now, the little flaps, on the other hand, are not going to be even. They are a little bit wonky. However, the line, like where the fold is completely flat, so that when you glue it down onto your brim, it like lays pretty much even to the brim. So what I'm doing here is I'm just gluing this and kind of like pulling it down. My glue is super watery here and I don't know why. But I'm holding this down and making sure that the tip is pretty much closed at the top. Like there should be no opening at the top with the cone. And once that's dry, you're just going to fold in all of those flaps. Again, those aren't super even, so I apologize, but the bottom of the cone is even. So you're going to do the same thing we did where we glue it down, kind of. Like I want to say it's the same, but you're going to be gluing it with hot glue. I felt like this was a little bit easier. So this is the same step here as for the bottom. We just went over that. So I'm going to speed through this real quick. But remember that the top is going to be bigger. So I am going to insert the bottom just like I did before where I put all the glue on. And then the top is going to go on flat, but it's much, much larger than the base of the top. And so I'm going to try to center them as best as possible. So you want to take that larger circle and center it onto this smaller circle to give your witch's hat a brim. So again, I'm going in with that glue on all of those extra knobs, and I'm going to center on that top piece. So a lot of this is eyeballing. I didn't mark anything. If you need to, you can use your scoring tool and make a center dot to kind of help you if you want that. However, I just sort of went with the flow and used my eyeballs. If that's something that you're looking for though, like marking points, let me know and I can start adding them onto my SVG files so that there's like more direction on where you place things. So I'm just making sure that this is really nice and flat onto the top. And now we're going to attach that cone. So again, I folded these in so that they were like super sharp edges. I'm folding it all the way into the cone. And then I'm going to use hot glue this time to glue it down because again, I wanted it to be super, super, super secure. So make sure your hot glue is already warming up and then give yourself like a decent amount of hot glue when you go around and make sure that you press down really securely. When you're doing this, also keep in mind you really only have like one shot to get this as center as possible. So take your time when you're placing it down. Again, if you want me to put marks on where you're supposed to do it, let me know in the future and I will. I also made sure to line up my seams in the back. That way there wasn't like a seam in the front and a seam in the back. It was all kind of cohesive. And obviously you can line up the seams with the top and the bottom as well, but that you can do manually because it doesn't stay connected. And so I am centering that, and there is the top of my witch's hat. And now we are going to add on our details. So I actually went and changed the ring for around this, so it is a little flatter onto the hat. And so you just glue your ring together. Again, it's kind of like the cone where you need it to be flat on both the top and the bottom. And then I actually used hot glue to attach this around the cone part of the hat. So see how I'm sliding it over? I'm going to line up the seams and then go with some hot glue on that ring and attach it down. It's not going to be super flush up against the cone. It's going to stick out just a little bit. And you also want it to be sitting a little bit higher up on the cone. I would say if you made your box the max amount on that 12 by 12 paper, that it sits maybe 1/8 of an inch up. So it's not like it sits up an inch. It sits up just a small amount. And that's also because you want the buckle to have some space when you put it on. Like you don't want the buckle to be curved or like not lying down flat. So we're going to put our buckle on next, and you'll kind of see what I mean. You don't want it to be super flush to the bottom. Like you want it to kind of sit out. So I kind of angled it a little bit so that we didn't bend it. And I used hot glue for this as well. So you shouldn't be bending your belt buckle or your hat buckle, whatever you want to call it. You should just be placing it over the orange stripe that we just put on. And that's why it needs to sit up a little bit, because if it was flush, then your buckle is not going to look like it's on the ribbon part of the hat. It's going to be like too high up, and it's not going to look proper. So see, I placed it on just a little bit like down, like on an angle. And so that's how you place your buckle on. Next, you're going to add on your little orange ring. This is optional. If you don't want to add it on, you don't have to, obviously. And I'm just using craft glue for this, and this goes right onto the top of the brim of the hat. So nothing super special there that I did, just added it on for a little bit of decoration. And this is the finished witch's hat. So now we can start doing all of our little accent pieces. I'm starting with my shaker potion bottle. And all of these accent pieces are totally optional if you don't want to add them on. Obviously, you can just hide them in Cricut Design Space. But to build my shaker, I'm going to do my paper layer and acetate layer. I do 2 layers of foam, so there's enough room for shaking. And then I do another acetate layer and then another paper layer to hide that foam. And so right now I'm just gluing my acetate on to the first paper layer. And then I'm going to start gluing down my foam, and then I'm going to fill it. Now, the only thing is that I have to iron on my HTV, so make sure that you have your mini press going if you're doing that, and I have it on the lowest setting. I am using my craft glue, my Barely Arts craft glue for this shaker, and I ended up reinforcing it with hot glue. So if you feel like the craft glue isn't holding as much as it should, then just go around and glue with hot glue. It'll hold a little bit stronger. So I'm doing the 2 layers of the craft foam with the Barely Arts, and try to keep the craft foam hidden on the paper backing so that you don't see it. The only thing I have to say is that my bottles that I did are white and my craft foam is white. So you can't really tell anyway, which is kind of nice. But if you did your bottle in a different color other than white, then you will see that white foam showing through. So I'm just doing my 2 layers right now of my craft foam and trying to make them as even as possible. I decided to set aside my layers and let that craft glue set. However, it didn't really set as much as I wanted to. So again, just reinforce with some hot glue. And now I am going to weed out my little potion that I did in HTV. Again, you can do this with regular vinyl or paper. I just like using HTV the most because it's, to me, the easiest to weed because it kind of sticks to that transfer paper. And so I'm just weeding everything out right now. And now I'm going to grab my heat press mat and I'm going to do it on the lowest setting. So I'm grabbing my other acetate, the one that we haven't glued yet. I know it's a little hard to see, and I'm going to even it up. And then when you're ready, you can press it. I did not use a Teflon sheet this time. I just pressed it for about 10 seconds, maybe even a little less, and it pressed perfectly. And I immediately pulled it off. I didn't even wait for it to really cool. And there was no problem. Really, there wasn't any warping, and it came out really nice. And now I have a nice little writing on there that was easy to put on. I didn't have to worry about losing any pieces. And now I am gluing the other side onto it. So that white paper that I cut out, I'm going to glue it onto my acetate. And then we're going to fill our shaker with some sequins. Make sure your potion is facing the right way so it's not inside out. And then I'm going to fill it with some sequins and then glue everything together. I like to be a little generous with my sequins and my glitter inside because I don't want it to not have like any filling. And so again, I went in with my craft glue, but you can definitely use hot glue. And here's our finished potion bottle. I almost forgot to add in my little cork top, so don't forget to put that on as well. We are jumping over and making our broom. And the first thing you're going to do is just one side. So it's a double-sided broom. You're going to glue the little notch, like it's like a rectangle, on to the bottom of the broom. So opposite those little crookeds. And now we are going to take some twine, and you want to cut about 1.5 to 2 inch pieces. And you're going to need about 3 or 4, depending on the size of your twine, like how thick it is. And you're going to cut these up, and then we're going to untwist them so you have like little hairs. So again, I'm cutting like 3 2-inch roughly pieces that I'm going to untwine. So I'm just unwinding them so that there are individual bristles, if you will, for our broom. And you want to have like a decent amount. So use as many as you feel necessary, unless you want to have like a old gross broom, which is kind of funny. And now we're going to use some hot glue to attach this to our broom. Here's what they should look like close up. Now I'm grabbing my hot glue and I'm going to attach that to the back side. I used gold foil, so that's what I'm saying, the back side of the broom. And I'm being like kind of liberal with my glue here, and just be careful, like use caution because you might get a little glue on your fingers, and just press them down kind of like in a V shape so that they're all attached onto that broom piece. And now we're going to assemble the other side the exact same way but opposite so that it sandwiches it. So you're going to want to flip your broom over, and then you're going to want to build it so that it fits on top. So you don't want your zigzags going the wrong way. So see, I have it the opposite way. You flip it over, make sure that it'll fit. You're going to build it and then sandwich them together. Sandwich them together while you build it. Either way is fine. Just make sure you're sandwiching it. So I use my craft glue for the top part of this, and then I used my hot glue again at the bottom to make sure that those bristles were really attached into that piece. And so that makes a little broom. So just make sure everything is glued down and sandwiched. And I wanted to make it double-sided so that way if you're looking at the broom from the other side of the box or anything like that, you can see that it's a broom all the way around. So again, just use some hot glue and then place that other rectangle on top, and that should secure those bristles into the broom itself. And that is how you make the broom. Now, as for placement, I really leave this up to you, but I will obviously show you where I placed mine. So I'm going to use hot glue to attach my broom to the top of the hat. So I put a tiny bit of glue on the tip of the cone, and I attached the broom to the tip of the cone and then ever so slightly to the side of the brim. So you're just going to put some glue right on the seam. That way it's in the back anyway. You can't really see it. And I'm going to attach my broom on an angle going down towards the brim. And of course, again, I just want to reiterate, you can place this wherever you want. I just like making the files for you and then use your creative mind to do whatever you'd like to. However, this is how I am placing my broom. And then on the side, I am going to attach it just ever so slightly, because if you don't attach it, it's kind of wobbly. So here is my placement for my broom on top of the witch's hat. For the potion bottle, I'm going to put a little bit of hot glue on the side over here and then attach it on an angle. This gives enough support on to the bottle so that it's not like hanging off, but also to make sure to not attach it to the lid. You want it to just be on the bottom part of the box. And so that's all you have to do to place that on, but it still has a little bit of a gap in the back. For the bats, I do a slight bend in their wings and then use a little bit of hot glue to place these wherever you want on the box. I did 3 on the hat, on the brim, and on top, like towards the cone. It helps hide if there's any hot glue showing. And then, I don't know what that little bump was. That was funny. And then I just glued on the rest of the bats on the side. And this is your final witch's hat box. I really love the way that this turned out. If you prefer my old witch's hat box, that is also still available for download on my website. I'll link that below as well so that you can see it. Thank you so much for joining me as we created this witch's hat favor box for Halloween. If you enjoyed making this project, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It helps me so much. Share it with one of your crafty friends and follow along if you want more free Cricut projects. Stay crafty!